Yeah, so in 1991, Oliver Stone made his fantastic movie JFK, which examines a lot of the theories around the Kennedy assassination. It's just a really well made film, like one of the best made films ever, I have to say. And um, he has to have seen the script. He did Platoon just a few years earlier than this, in which there's literally hundreds of squibs going off. And so he had to know that it was a squib. Now I'm cutting Oliver a break here, okay? Because the way that a film works is you write the screenplay, and then you go get money, and then you make the film. Okay, so he did not have a high quality version of the Zapruder film. None of us did until he was months into production. Okay, so what he did was he paid Time Life $80,000 to have a really good high quality version of the Zapruder film made. This took a while. So he's in pre-production working, making the film. He wrote the script fully thinking that, you know, there had been a killer or shooter in the grassy knoll, and he was writing it that way. And then, you know, he gets the high quality version of the Zapruder film, and he watches it. He's already millions of dollars into this project, right? He sees the Zapruder film. This is what I think happened. He sees the squib. He's probably flabbergasted, probably deflated, because it's kind of Kennedy faking his death is much more deflating than a violent assassination in the town square. And he was kind of forced to stick with the original storyline. I would really like to talk to Oliver Stone about this. The Secret Service and the FBI quickly gather up all the photographs, the movie films, everything taken by the bystanders near the point where the assassination supposedly took place. All right, they're doing that because they want to make sure that nobody gets a photograph of Kennedy putting the squib on and everything. The only person that's allowed to have their film be seen is Abraham Zapruder. Okay, we don't know about all the rest of the stuff. Fell into a black hole, disappeared forever. We'll never know what was taken that day. We know that there's a film of the Secret Service being instructed by their superior to back away from the limousine, which they're not supposed to do. They're supposed to be on all sides of the limousine, protecting the president from any bullets coming through, and they aren't. I believe that they did that to protect the Secret Service from seeing Kennedy putting on the squib, so therefore they wouldn't be witnesses to it. So the late Gary Mack was a really good researcher who started out as a conspiracy theorist and then later became the non-conspiracy theorist. But what he did was he took one of the photographs that had not been confiscated from the Kennedy assassination, and he started examining it, and he took one little part of this Polaroid, black and white Polaroid photograph, about this big of an area, and he blew it up, and he started looking, and then he added color. He thought he saw a grainy, impressionistic photo of a police officer or someone with a badge on shooting a gun right towards the president. Gary Mack, this is his work, Gary Mack later said that that wasn't true. There wasn't enough information in the photograph for him to reach those conclusions, and him changing the color, of course, who knew what the colors were? So he was just arbitrarily choosing what colors he wanted to make everything, and he eventually realized that he kind of cheated a little bit with the badge man photo. And I think that was one of the things that caused him to turn on the conspiracy. And he realized, first off, that you could take a scant amount of evidence and build a gigantic conspiracy around it, and then hundreds of other conspirators join in, and soon this thing, which is based on flimsy evidence, is now religious doctrine in the conspiracy community. But the FBI absolutely refuses to follow up on hundreds of different leads after the assassination. Everything from the guy that supposedly got a chip hit from a bullet fragment, they don't follow up on that one. They don't follow up on many witnesses and what they had to say, leading conspiracy theorists to believe that the FBI must be involved in a cover-up of the Kennedy assassination, but they're not. They know what happened, and they don't care. Why bother following up on leads when you know that's not what happened? So the reason that the FBI is not following up on all these great leads is because the FBI doesn't want to waste their energy and their resources following up on stuff that isn't true. Kennedy had already been warned earlier that somebody was going to try to do a hit on him from a high-rise office building, so that you make you think that the Secret Service would even be more willing and ready to make sure that every window was closed. It's almost as if they didn't really care. That's what the whole scene looks like. But they were definitely told to back away. And so procedures for Secret Service, when a car is in the open like that, Clint Eastwood actually made a movie about this, is the Secret Service agent runs with the car right next to the president. So it should have been a Secret Service agent running with the car, blocking the president's body from any projectiles coming through, sacrificing their own life to protect the president, which is what they're supposed to be doing. But this is the only time that the Secret Service is called completely off from protecting the perimeter of the limousine, and they're hanging actually way back behind the limousine. And the conspiracy theorists say, oh, they knew that there was going to be an assassination and they didn't want to get hit by the bullets, so they went and backed up, but that's not what happened. What happened is they were being protected from being witnesses to the squib. You wanted as few people to see that squib being put on the face and going off as possible, which is also why the crowds are so sparse. They purposely made sure that only certain number of people got into that area where this was going to happen, and so that there would be fewer witnesses. They did ask members of the mob after the assassination, high-ranking members of the mob, not low guys, if they knew who shot Kennedy, right? And every mobster points at other mobsters, and so it must have been them. It must have been Johnny Rossellini who did it, because I didn't do it, right? But he must have done it. He had a gripe against the Kennedys. And so the mob's all pointing at each other. But here's the thing. The mob is really mad at the Kennedys for investigating organized crime. So they have a motive in shooting and killing Kennedy, right? Kennedy knows this. His father was in the mob. They know everything that's going on. All right. Kennedy knows that the mob has a hit out on him. All right. Maybe several hits out on him. So what I think he did was he decided to supersede the mob and do it himself, get out of the presidency, and the mob would not really know what happened, except that one of them had done it, but everyone was keeping their mouth shut. And so no one knew who did it. And the mob people themselves expressed surprise that they haven't heard the rumors about who actually did it, because they're all talking to each other. They all know everything's going on. And so they knew that there was a hit on Kennedy. They thought that one of them had done the hit on Kennedy and had successfully kept it hidden from even them. Kennedy's great benefit is that his family is protected now. They would frequently kill your wife and kids before they killed you, just to really rub it in on you. So Kennedy was probably really afraid of that. So he decided to do it himself for whatever reason, but whatever reason it was, it stopped the mob from going any further. I just want to reiterate that the people who have been examining the Kennedy assassination, no matter who they are wrong. Wrong not because they did a bad investigation, they're wrong because they're ignorant of what a squib is and how it works. I hope that my explanation for how a squib works will make them see that Kennedy faked his own death for whatever reason.
Is there any other evidence that the entire event was faked? On November 27th, just 5 days after being shot in the back with a high-powered rifle, Governor John Connally gave this interview.
What other reflections have you had, Governor? Only that maybe, Martin, that the President of the United States, as a result of this great tragedy, it is nothing more than a manifestation of an extremism on both sides that basically is the genesis of our self-destruction if we're ever going to be destroyed. I'm not the least fearful of any foreign enemy, so long as we have within ourselves not hate, but human understanding, not passion and prejudice, but reason and tolerance, and not ignorance, but knowledge, and the willingness to use that knowledge. This is the only answer I can give, Martin, why he's gone, I'm not. Thank you, Governor.
He appears to be in fairly good condition considering what he claims to have had happen. One would think that he would have been on painkillers and other drugs, having been shot in the back by a high-powered rifle just a few days earlier. But he appears very sober, clear-headed, and healthy. Listen to this phone call made 10 days after the assassination between Jacqueline Kennedy and the new president, LBJ.
Mr. President?
I just wanted you to know you were loved, and by so many, so much.
Oh, Mr.
I'm one of them.
I tried. I didn't dare bother you again, but I got Kenny O'Donnell over here to give you a message. If he ever saw you, did he give it to you yet? About my letter that was waiting for me last night?
Listen, sweetie, now, first thing you got to learn, you got some things to learn. One of them is that you don't bother me. You give me strength.
But I wasn't going to send you in one more letter, and I was
Don't
just
send
scared
me
you'd
anything.
answer
Don't
it.
send me anything. You just come over and put your arm around me. That's all you do. When you haven't got anything else to do, let's take a walk. Let's walk around the backyard and just let me tell you how much you mean to all of us and how we can carry on if you give us a little
But
strength.
you know what I wanted to say to you about that letter? I know how rare a letter is in the president's handwriting. Do you know that I've got more in your handwriting than I do in Jack's now? And for you to write it at this time and then to send me that thing today of, your tape announcement and everything.
I want you to just know this, that I told my mama a long time ago when everybody else gave up about my election in 48.
Yeah.
My mother and my wife and my sisters and you females got a lot of courage that we men don't have. And so we have to rely on you and depend on you, and you got something to do. You got the president relying on you, and this is not the first one you had. So there are not many women, run around with a good many presidents. So you just bear that in mind. You got the biggest job of your life.
He ran around with 2 presidents. That's what they'll say about me. Okay, anytime.
Goodbye, Bob.
Thank you for calling, Mr. President. Goodbye.
Do come back.
I will.
This is the first time they have spoken since the killing of her husband. LBJ doesn't spend a moment consoling her about her loss. Even weirder, she isn't sad and doesn't appear to be mourning. But perhaps the strangest part of this phone call is that President Lyndon Johnson, LBJ, is apparently coming on to Jackie Kennedy and is trying to have sex with her. As he was being sworn in for president on Air Force One in Dallas, LBJ was given a wink and a smile by Congressman Albert Thomas. Many found this rude and inappropriate, especially with Jackie standing right next to LBJ. Perhaps in the context of actually understanding what really just occurred, the wink may have been appropriate. Boston University history professor Robert Dallek was visiting the Kennedys at the White House shortly after the Bay of Pigs incident. Quote, he had heard a lecture at the White House by distinguished historian David Herbert Donald, a Lincoln Civil War expert, unquote. Professor Dallek said, quote, at that lecture, Kennedy asked Donald if Lincoln, with his reputation, had lived, be as great as it is. Donald said, probably not, because he would have had to wrestle with the post-Civil War era, unquote. Dallek remembers that this information had a profound effect on JFK. Perhaps he wanted a legacy, also similar to Lincoln's. On March 14, 1967, JFK's body was quietly exhumed from his grave at Arlington Cemetery and moved to another location. What was the real reason for exhuming the president's body in the middle of the night without telling him? No reason has ever been given for this action. If JFK faked his death, the question becomes why? Perhaps it was for a number of reasons. Perhaps the mob had put out a hit on him in early 1963. Perhaps there were other rumors of assassinations that we have never heard about. It is not well known, but JFK was suffering from Addison's disease. He was in constant pain and had to wear a brace on his neck. Possibly he had been told he had a limited period of time left and he didn't want to spend that time being president. It was also well known that the marriage between JFK and Jackie was on the rocks. Things had cooled considerably over the course of the presidency, with both of them having affairs. JFK's sexual escapades are legendary. It was said that he bedded Marilyn Monroe, Judith Exner, who had mob ties, and other women. But there was one woman that JFK was seeing in private that he may have fallen in love with. It was well known that one of JFK's mistresses was Mary Pinchot Meyer, a beautiful socialite in the Washington, D.C. setting. In 1945, Mary married Cord Meyer, who later became head of the CIA. Her sister Toni would marry CIA asset and eventual editor of the Washington Post, Benjamin Bradley. Ben Bradley would later bring down another president, President Nixon, when he published damaging information concerning the Watergate burglary, leading eventually to Nixon's resignation. On October 12, 1964, just 11 months after JFK's fake assassination, Mary Pinchot Meyer was murdered, and her murder has many odd elements to it. It was around 12:30 on a sunny afternoon, and Mary was taking her usual afternoon walk on the DC towpath. Two men, Henry Wiggins and William Branch, who were working near the towpath on a car, heard two gunshots and a woman crying out, "Someone help me." They looked across the canal and saw a man with a gun standing over a woman laying on the path. Wiggins ran to call the police. The man was later arrested by police and identified as Ray Crump Jr. This is where things start to get weird. Wiggins made the call to the police at between 12:23 and 12:25, but the prosecutor reports that the police arrived at 12:24. It is as if they knew about the murder before it occurred. Furthermore, no ambulance was called in. How could they know she was 100% dead? If there was a remote chance at saving her life, shouldn't they try and do everything they can? The police are not doctors. Why was just the homicide squad called in after getting notified by the police? Other high weirdness is the fact that they could not find the car that Wiggins claims he was working on. The two men, Wiggins and Branch, were joined by a third witness, William Mitchell, who passed by Mary while jogging. These are the only three people who witnessed anything close to the event. It turns out later that Mitchell was an alias for a man who worked at the CIA. No record of his identity was ever found, and we don't know why he was near her when she was supposedly murdered. Did both JFK and Mary Pinchot Meyer fake their deaths so they could be together? The fact that she had serious connections with the Washington, D.C. establishment and that her ex-husband had been the head of the CIA would give one pause to consider. Also, the idea that an ex-wife of the head of the CIA can be mysteriously murdered in public in broad daylight and no one is ever convicted. But the strangest part of this story, and one pertinent to the narrative being constructed, is the story of young journalist Vance Morrow. Vance heard the police report of Wiggins' phone call concerning the murder. Right nearby, he ran to the scene, getting there before anybody else. He reported seeing no blood on Mary Pinchot Meyer's body. He wrote about this in the Smithsonian Magazine. She was shot twice, and yet no blood at the scene. Frankly, the photos that were taken looked staged. It has also been reported that CIA counterintelligence officer James Jesus Angleton broke into Mary's house that same afternoon and stole her diary. Did Mary fake her death also so that she could join her lover in some faraway land? There is enough strangeness around the death of Mary Pinchot Meyer to give one pause for reflection. There were rumors at the time, mostly in the tabloids, that JFK was alive and well and living on Aristotle Onassis' island Scorpius. The fact that soon after the assassination, his wife Jackie would marry Aristotle Onassis lends some credence to these rumors. We will probably never figure out exactly why JFK faked his death. We do know that this event had a very negative effect both on the citizens of the country and on the political system as well. It is a tragedy that a leader with the charisma and charm of John F. Kennedy decided to leave his position as president and also leave behind his past life. Perhaps after almost 60 years of pain and struggle, we, as a country, can finally put the issue to rest.